Hello, everyone. Welcome of YHB TV, your handmade business television, a weekly series where we here at Academy of Handmade are dedicated to helping you navigate all things #maker life. I am co-director of Academy of Handmade, Sharon, along with my partner in maker crime, Isaac Watson. We are both here to help you and support you along your business journey as makers and handmade artists, helping you work on your business, not just in your business. Each week we tackle a topic that we think gets deeper into what's really going on in your business. And today we're going to be discussing productivity, which I feel like we're definitely going to talk a little bit about some tips of productivity, but we're also going to talk about some psychological stuff around it too, I think. So, and you know, the summer can be notoriously unproductive in a maker business. And so just, you know, sometimes being gentle with yourself a little bit and figuring out what's going on can really help. So we're going to dive deeper into that. But before we do, I'd like to let you know that this episode of YHB TV is brought to you by Jumpstart Your Handmade Business. Isaac and I have met thousands of makers over the years, and we noticed that there tends to be one major thing that makes it hard to make progress, which is if you don't have clarity on your business and you haven't defined your roadmap to success, it will be very hard for you to go forward. Our self-guided Jumpstart program helps you understand the big picture of your business by setting goals, knowing your numbers, and honing in on the right resources for the right solution. Learn more at academyofhandmade.com/jumpstart or click the link below. Button below.
So speaking of productivity, you know what's not productive today is the internet. Your internet does not seem to like you. It must be all that heat.
No, it has definitely been acting up, and I feel like has gone in and out a couple times. So I'm a little annoyed. And then we had also Isaac's audio being weird, having ghosts in it or something. I don't know. And so we got on a little late today. Yeah, sorry, guys.
I'd blame it on Mercury in retrograde, but I
don't
even
like
know
that.
if that's a thing right now, so it doesn't really matter. But that's true. Well, my understanding is that everybody is just hot right now, which is,
yes.
I mean, it's the end of July, and that's kind of par for the course. But this heat wave has been something else, and I think I hope that everybody's staying cool in different ways.
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep a French bulldog alive over here, guys. They are not built for the heat. They're like 5 seconds in it, and they're panting up a storm. So
yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit. Let's be productive here and talk a little bit about honing in on productivity. And I think, as Sharon and I were talking about this and getting ready for this episode, I think that we very aptly and subconsciously named this honing in on productivity, because productivity is not just something you get. It is a process. It is a learning experience. There's no one answer because it is highly personalized and will take some tweaking as you go, as you change, as your business changes, as your environment around you changes. Productivity is a thing that we constantly have to, I wouldn't say chase, but learn about and pay attention to and work at as we go, because there is no one answer. There's no be all end all. Oh, use this technique, or oh, do that, or yeah, a bullet journal is the way to go. I mean, people will give you productivity fads just like diets, but it is really about finding what works for you personally and the way you work and the way you think and the way you feel, and tweak from there.
I definitely feel like that there are seasons where I have had to change how I've organized my productivity and how I'm doing things, and then switch back to another way, you know? So I feel like you have to do what works for you. And if you start butting up into problems in the current system you have, then you have to, you know, sort of adapt to that. And, you know, same thing with if the system that you adapted stops working well for you, then you have to adapt and change again. Like there's always reasons why what was working for you at one point isn't going to work for you at this point.
And to that effect, when you think about your business ebbs and flows throughout the year, especially as a maker. You probably have a really heavy holiday season and a really slow summer, or maybe slow early summer, and then things get crazy around wholesale time. But just like your business ebbs and flows, so will your productivity. Just because you are not feeling terribly productive, or you're feeling especially unproductive in a particular time period, doesn't mean that you are not a productive person, or that that's a problem. It just means that your productivity is going to ebb and flow with that. So don't beat yourself up. I think the first piece of advice is you cannot be 100% productive all the time. So you just need to let yourself go with the flow to some extent, and give yourself permission to be unproductive, or to have unproductive days, or to do less than productive work.
Yeah. I mean, I think you cannot be in that, you know, in a business where it ebbs and flows like that, you cannot be in high productive mode all the time, or you will just like burn out. You have to like let yourself be in unproductive or low productive modes, and sort of just know when that you're going to eventually snap out of them, and to make sure that you're resting and and energized out of those times, so that you can get ready for productivity again.
You want to hit the next one?
Yeah. So the next one is, and this is something that can be hard for me too, is that productivity is a habit and a skill, not something that you can adopt immediately. So just kind of like what Isaac was saying with the bullet journals and other sort of fads that come up, like Pomodoro, whatever. And you're like, okay, I'm going to find this one system and it's going to make me super productive, but it has to be practiced. And so just like we said, like not every system isn't going to work for everyone. So you have to practice the system a few times to see if it does work for you. And it's just not going to be, you know, a magic bullet automatically making you miraculously productive.
It is definitely a skill set. Some people are better at being productive and focused than others. It's the whole reason why there are so many different types of productivity methods and ways to get things done, is because it varies greatly from person to person.
Yeah. And I think it's like, you know, thinking about like an exercise routine or something like that, where it's like, you're not going to like go out and run a 5K your first day running or whatever. It's going to take a while to like work up to that and get good at that. And if you stop running one day, you know, or a week or something, you just don't beat up yourself. You just get back into it.
Absolutely. I was going to add something to that, and then I lost my train of thought. My brain's not being productive right now, but that's okay, because sometimes it's just,
we'll blame it on the heat.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about finding a system that does work for you, a productivity system. So we feel like there are a couple things that, or a handful of things that you should keep in mind that can help you hone those skills and find a method that works for you. First of all, make sure that you know what your end goal is and eliminate any distractions. This is helpful because if you don't go into trying to be productive with an end goal in mind, you're going to be all over the place. Someone like me, and I don't know if this is true for anybody else, but I tend to be easily distracted by things that seem to be more pressing than the task at hand. So I will often I'll schedule out time to do something, or add something to my to-do list, and then it comes time to do it, and it ends up getting usurped by something else, some other fire that I feel like needs to be put out that is more important, or that pays me better, or that makes me feel more accomplished. So I think by trying to eliminate distractions and going into a work period with a goal in mind, that's going to help you stick to that goal if you can kind of tell yourself what that is.
The other thing is to document the process and set rules for yourself. Document the process means more just like you are going through all of the steps it needs to take to get something accomplished, not just, you know, one big project and tick it off. You know, you actually like have the steps written out, and that you sort of like know when things are going to happen, how you're going to accomplish them. You know, if it's something that's going to be really intense and you need to know that you're going to take certain breaks, or you're allowed to, you know, you need to get up, you need to have time to like take walks, or like, you know, eat, however that is, take a big break in the middle and do something else and come back. You know, that you have to figure that out ahead of time, so that when you go into it, you can tell yourself like, all right, I need to just push through this for like 30 more minutes, and then I get a break.
The other thing that documenting your process can help with is if you, like me, tend to be ambitious with your task goal setting, or a poor judge of how long it takes to do something. If you document your process as you go, this allows you to better break up your tasks into smaller chunks in the future. So you can realize, oh, hey, guess what? In this hour span of time, I can't actually edit an entire podcast. So I need to break that down and be a little bit more conscious about either how much time I'm setting aside, or do it in smaller chunks that are achievable in an hour.
And I think too, when you document the process, and the more that you sort of like do it as you're doing it, and like before you're going to do it, so you're thinking through what you're going to do, then you sort of have this thing that you can potentially eventually give to somebody else. You know, if it's something that you can outsource.
Okay, so another thing that we think can help you determine a system that works for you is to avoid chasing those trends like diets, but do experiment willingly. If there is a particular part of your work process, or your to-do management, or whatever that is, that isn't working well, that's an area that could use some experimentation and improvement. So you don't necessarily want to just jump out and jump into a bullet journal process and completely scrap your Post-it notes on your wall and you know, throw your tomato timer in the garbage. But if you are having a problem managing your tasks or staying on focus, and you think something might help, then yes, it's absolutely okay to try that, keeping in mind that you don't want to completely reinvent the wheel all the time.
Yeah, no, totally. I think this idea of like implementing a system purely is the way to like be the most productive is like super silly. Like the way to be the most productive is to be the way the most productive works for you. So I don't think that there's some idea that like the purity of doing complete bullet journal as has been laid out, like you're going to get some reward for that. Like if it does not work for you and it's like very strict form, it's totally fine to like incorporate, you know, some of the Pomodoro or whatever. Like it doesn't have to be, these are all guidelines. They don't have to make them like weird dictates for your life.
Exactly. And I do think that it's also worth considering that just because you don't see immediate results out of something doesn't mean you should abandon it right away. Because if we go back to what we said before, where productivity is a process and a habit that you need to form and a skill that you need to build, you need time to do that. So, you know, I was just realizing that about a month ago, maybe a little bit more, I started a master to-do list for myself in Airtable, like across all of the things I work on. And it was the first time I ever had like a single place where I was putting everything I was supposed to do. And when I first started it, because it's Airtable and because I love Airtable, I was like, yes, 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 this is amazing. This is great. And then my big event happened last month, and I kind of wasn't paying attention to my master to-do list because I was busy doing the event stuff. And then the 2 weeks following, I basically didn't touch my to-do list because I was still kind of recovering from the event and this, that, and the other. And I almost caught myself saying, oh, that didn't work for me. I should find another method. And then I thought, wait a second, no, I need to just add some more things back into my Airtable master to-do list and get back on track and see if I can continue developing this habit. And I've been doing that for the last week or so, and I already feel myself getting back into the groove again, and it seems to be working. So I don't know if this is a great long-term solution for me because I'm still experimenting with it, but I also made sure that I didn't abandon it just because I got really busy or needed some time to recuperate from working really hard. And using that as an excuse to walk away from it.
See, to me, the master to-do list, I love when it's like, when you're really busy and you do sort of have to track like that. And I think there's a lot going on, and you want to make sure you're not letting anything slip through the cracks, not the tracks. But I do think, yeah, like it does get harder to maintain. But if you just sort of kind of understand, like, I mean, it might be different for you too, but like if you understand, like, okay, this is when it works for me the most, this is when it's harder to maintain, sort of figuring out the balance on that too can also be helpful.
And what I learned was, or what I realized is that trying to track things digitally when I'm working in a single place most of the time and just trying to catch things all the time, it worked much better for me to just write down things for each day in my notebook, because I always had it on me. I always had a pen with me, and I could just track it as I go and then cross those things off. So in the really, really busy times, the analog version tended to help me more. But when I have more leeway and control over things, digital tends to be better for me. Anyway.
The final note is to know when you are being productive. For how to know when you're being productive, because I think productivity is like super subjective, and I think we can like look at people at their like peak productivity moments and be like, I have to be like this all the time. And some people are just like really productive people too. Like I have a friend, Jenny, that she just like gets a million things done in a day and has like 3 children, and I don't know how she does any of it. And she's like making crazy dinners and whatever, but like all of this stuff works for her and she enjoys it. And like she's a weird person that can only gets like 5 hours of sleep, and like that is not me. And like that's been her whole life. So I'm never gonna try to make myself be Jenny in that area, because like she's not the same, so I think productivity is subjective, and I have to think like, what is productive for me? What is valuable in getting things done for me? And sometimes for me, like spending time with my husband without other distractions is, very, very productive, if not necessarily a thing that looks like it when you tick it off on a list. I'm sure you feel the same. Like Isaac goes to the cabin a lot during the summers with his husband and the dog, and that might not seem productive, but that's it's a necessary thing in order to be productive.
Absolutely.
At some level.
And I think, I mean, we all have these recharge methods, right? Whether it's spending time with our spouse or partner, whether it's playing with our pets or going for a walk or journaling, or there are so many different ways that we can recharge. Those are just as important to keep in mind as the actual getting stuff done. And I cannot tell you how many times I have gone off to the cabin where we have very little internet access, and certainly no space to really get work done when I have a to-do list 5 miles long, but I need to emotionally take that time off to be able to recharge and then get back into it. So setting aside that time to do that is important. I think the other thing is that there's a balance to be had between feeling productive but not actually accomplishing anything because you're just doing busy work, versus feeling productive because you're actually being productive, if that makes sense. I think that there are plenty of things that we can do that we can often distract ourselves with that don't actually need to be done. In fact, sometimes I dive into productivity as an escape mechanism for things I'm supposed to be doing. So I'm like, I'm going to redesign my entire website in this 4-hour period because that sounds more fun to me, and I can just hyper focus on it instead of doing something else that I'm supposed to do. So I think it takes a lot of discernment to understand the difference between what is really important to work on versus what seems like it's important to work on, but is actually busy work. And then figuring out, okay, well, I feel productive after this work session. What did I actually accomplish? And kind of balancing that against making progress against your goals.
Yeah. No, totally. I think when something sort of needs to get done and you don't want to do it, sometimes it's easier to like fake some productivity of like, I really need to like redesign my website, or I really need to like organize all of these spreadsheets or whatever it is. And it's like a faux productivity thing. And it's like, yeah, this is fine to do when you have nothing else to do, but you have things to do. So this isn't what you should be doing.
Can we just coin that term, faux-ductivity?
Productivity. I love it.
Yeah,
I love
totally
it.
Using that.
Don't be productive. So in the chat, we had a couple comments. Lori was saying that since we have fall here in Indiana, summer productivity is a must. Fall events are equal to, if not more important than the holiday events. Oh my gosh, that's a great point. And definitely, I think some people, the way their schedules are is that, you know, obviously the holidays aren't the busiest time of the year for them. So like it does sort of, you know, we're sort of generalizing here. So somebody else might also be, you know, this might be their most productive time of the year. We know there's a Carolyn from with elephant. What's her wishing elephant? Yes. Halloween is her big, she makes kids, you know, Halloween costumes. So Halloween is her big time. So she is like, you know, this is her October right now, which is she's getting ready for all of that. And it's go time for her. So it's different for everyone, of course. So and then Leslie says, since production is slow and orders are not really coming in this month, I'm trying to learn ways to educate myself better, but I am feeling so unmotivated and my savings are running low. Well, I mean, there's definitely obviously free resources and things like that. But I would say in terms of the motivation is like, figure out the ways, if you're trying to learn things and get better in your business, figure out the ways that you really enjoy learning. And if it means that, you know, you enjoy being in a more social environment, try to figure out if there are ways for you to get out and learn and be in the community more and connect with other people. Because I think sometimes if you're just trying to force yourself to watch a bunch of classes online, that can be, really rough if you don't have the interaction where if you're somebody that sort of thrives on that being social thing.
Yeah,
so.
I would definitely say that there are plenty of ways to focus on using what learning opportunities you have in front of you that don't cost money. I would definitely recommend checking out what Creative Live is broadcasting live or rebroadcasting through their channels, because that's free and available. And I would even say, like, go find another maker to grab coffee with, or a small group to meet up with. I think that there's a lot of value and a lot of motivation to be found just getting face to face with other makers. I've always been a huge advocate of that. And having people to talk to about what you're going through, and give you support and feedback and ideas.
Yeah. We did have a question. Spring M says, I think my productivity sucks and it's probably my biggest problem. I'm constantly creating daily lists for myself that are just not possible to accomplish in a day. I end up getting bummed because I'm always overestimating what I can do. I feel unbelievably slow with anything. Any suggestions? You want to take this, Isaac?
Guilty. I continue to do that. Even my fancy master to-do list, I add way too many things to it. I was just dealing with that yesterday. It's like, how did I think I was going to get all of this done today? That's not realistic. So I think what it comes down to for this kind of a situation, and you are definitely not alone in this, is we, especially as makers, pile all of the responsibilities on ourselves. That is a completely natural thing to do, because we are the only person in the business. We feel like we are responsible for doing everything. And when you add to that all of the comparison game that happens around social media and mentor businesses and peer businesses, it can all pile on and have us feeling completely unproductive, and setting really, really high, unreasonable expectations for ourselves. That said, what I would recommend, and I know that this works really well for a friend of mine who I've worked with in the past, you might try limiting your to-do list to 3 items. If you are to only work on 3 things in a given day, what are those things? And see if applying some constraint to your list making, you can increase your likelihood of being able to accomplish those things. I think that might also help you determine whether or not you are poorly judging how long it will take you to do something. There's someone I work with on events pretty regularly. I've worked with him for a number of years now. And I learned about 3 years in that he's terrible about estimating how long it's going to take him to do something. And I always felt like we were running late. And then I started observing how long it actually took him to do what he said he was going to do. And it was double what he estimated. He was just overly optimistic by 50%. So I adjusted my own expectations and just started, anytime he would say, oh, it'll take me 30 minutes, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to give him an hour. And for me, that helped figure out how better to manage the process for getting those things done. But I think for you, what it might do is help you understand what your kind of factor of over or underestimation it is, and to plan around that. And if you still feel like 3 things on your list is too much, or if you keep adding 3 really big things to your list that are still insurmountable in a day, then scale it back even further and try that.
See, to me, I would also think that my tendency is to feel like I have to get everything done in this one day, and I forget that tomorrow exists. And that's when I think having a planner or having a notepad or something that lets you write a to-do list out, but write it for 5 days at a time. Write it out for the week, and then you can obviously add to it. And this could, also just be a planner or whatever it is, but just focus on the 5 days and then spread your stuff out evenly so that, and obviously some things have to be done by certain days too. But if you're cramming everything into one day, you're going to feel super bummed all the time that things aren't getting done. But if you're oh, I don't have to do that until Wednesday, that makes things a little bit easier to sort of put off. So I think that's when having more than just the today's to-do list helps when you can see sort of like, all right, I don't have to do all this right
Absolutely. The other suggestion I had that you might try is tracking your time, and seeing if that helps you focus on specific tasks. And that'll also give you some hard numbers around how long it is taking you for you to do things.
Isaac and I have both used something called Toggle as well too, which is like a timer that people will often use if they work with like clients and things like that to see how long things take. And it's very easy to use, and you just sort of like, you can, track, they let you do clients, but they let you also sort of like say, okay, what project does this go to? And then what task is this, in the project? So I find that very helpful. It gives you like sort of a breakdown of everything, and it kind of lets you know how long certain tasks take you.
I'm a massive advocate for tracking time, and it's especially helpful for me because I know when the timer's running on a particular task, it helps me focus just on that task, because I'm less likely to stray into other projects and things.
Yeah, yep, totally. So that's something we recommend, as well. All right, so wrapping things up. This is our last July Your Handmade Business TV. Next month, August, we are having a 80s movie themed sessions. And we're starting out with Risky Business. So you guys are going to want to be here for that. Lori asks, is Toggle an app? It is a desktop and also a phone app, right?
Yeah, they have mobile apps, and I think they have a desktop app as well. I also use Harvest. I use that in particular because it allows for client invoicing and things like that. It's a little more complicated and more in tune for freelancers. But I know a lot of people use Toggle. There's some others as well.
Yeah, I highly recommend Toggle. It's something you can just at the end of the month see where all of your time went to and what you've been spending your time on. And yeah, it's eye-opening when you're like, sometimes you're like, I thought I was like, spending 10 hours on this project, and you're like, I spent 20. Oh, okay. Yeah. So, but yes, next month we have the end of summer 80s themed movie movie sessions, starting out with Risky Business. So you're going to want to be here for that. Isaac put the link to that in the chat. So you guys will, yes, Isaac will be here in his shirt, underwear, and socks, just sliding on through.
Sharon and I totally had a text message exchange last night where she was like, let's call it Risky Business. And I was like, do I get to just wear my underwear and shades? And she said, yes, we need our ratings to go up.
I said, yeah, we need to spice things up, get a buzz going. That I said, as it's going to be here in a skivvies. So no, everything will remain PG to PG-13.
The sad truth about that is I've never actually seen the movie. I just know that scene.
Yes.
Yeah, my 80s movie knowledge is not great, but
maybe you should fix that. But yes, so we'll be talking about taking a risk in your business. So it will have nothing to do with Tom Cruise at all. So
or will it?
Or will it? Special appearance. Tell your friends. Let them know. This is how we're gonna get this viral, guys. Tom Cruise is gonna be here next week.
Jumping
Let
up
everyone
and down
know.
on my sofa.
All right, everyone. We hope that you have a great and productive rest of your week. So we'll see you all next week, next month. Bye everyone.